It's not just mine, his or her house. This is our house.
Hello, my name is Tyrone Lowe. This is my show, The Legends. I want to thank everybody that actually subscribes to my show and show me love all over the world. In the House of the Legends, I have a true legend, somebody that actually influenced us with his jazz craft. And I bring to you the legendary and Grammy Award winner, Najee. Hey, Najee, what's going on?
How you doing? What's going on, Tyrone? How you
I
doing?
am quite well, man. It's an honor to have you on my show. Welcome to my show, The
Thank,
Legends.
thank you so much.
Let's talk about the beginning for you because you actually picked up the horn at the age of 8 years old.
Yeah, a little later than that. Actually, it was probably about 9, 10 around there.
Okay, and you was influenced by Grover, Ron Laws, and people that was actually in that craft. So
Yeah.
let's talk about that. So how did they actually inspire you to actually enhance your craft?
Well, they came a little later in my development. When I started, I grew up in Manhattan. I was born in Manhattan, but my mother was a real jazz fan.
Okay,
Uh, she was loved Miles Davis, Four More. I remember that album being played a lot of Duke Ellington. So I fell in love with the saxophone sound, starting with George Coleman, hearing him, play,
hmm
and then that evolved into Stanley Turrentine and others. And then when I got to junior high school, around high school, that's when I first heard Grover and Ronnie Laws and all that. So yeah, but those men, I have to say, for the culture of the saxophone, they were the
right,
ones that actually changed the culture of jazz as we understood it.
yeah,
At that time in the '70s, when there was a melding of different cultural influences of R&B and jazz coming together, and
right,
I was a product of that. One of them. So
okay. So tell the viewers now, there's different types of jazz. Can you tell the viewers a few of the different styles that's out there, or that you actually experienced?
yeah, at the core of it all, it always takes a player who can improvise. You
Right,
know, and at the core of jazz is always the spirit of improvisation, and that takes a skill of knowing, basic things about music, and all those type of things. But I think jazz, they say different kinds of jazz, but I prefer to say that jazz is a reflection of the cultural times as well as other musics in the American art form. So the industry, for the sake of commerce, has called it contemporary jazz, smooth jazz, traditional jazz. I mean, to me, my brother Fareed, he always said the only difference between in the note C, in classical or jazz or any form of jazz or R&B is culture. That's it.
right.
It's
hmm
still the same note. So I really
Understand? Yeah.
get caught up in things because on my albums I do a lot of I go from R&B to what we call traditional jazz. I mean, I've recorded with several jazz artists who would be considered traditional, Herbie, George Duke, Stanley Clark, Billy Cobham, and on and on and on. And then and then I'll go play with Prince. You see what I'm saying? So
Right, right. So it's a whole different aura.
for me, it's like it's just music, and
Yeah.
I'm a
You
firm
know,
believer
uh,
two
Go ahead.
kinds that there's only two kinds of music, good or bad, so that's my
Well, that's a good way of putting it. I mean, you've toured with everybody from Chaka Khan to Freddie Jackson, and the list goes on and on.
yeah.
So each artist has a whole different type of vibe. So can you explain how you actually adjust to all that?
It was the way I grew up in New York City. Playing
Okay.
up as a player in the '70s, as a young teenager, you were encouraged to play everything you could. So
Okay.
even though I came out of the R&B bands in Queens, we studied at Jazzmobile on the weekends. On Saturdays, I had the opportunity to study with the legendary Jimmy Heath, Ernie Wilkins, Frank Foster, Frank West.
Right.
And so I had the opportunity to be exposed to jazz at a very young age, and it became part of my cultural language, if you will, my professional language. So that's pretty much it for me. I mean, I explore any kind of music that is willing to be heard. by me. You know, so.
I hear that. Najee, let's talk about your very first album because that was a mind blower. Um, tell the viewers about Najee's theme and how did
Mhm.
you actually come about that? Because that became so interesting and very repetitious in the jazz world. So
Yes.
tell the viewers about that.
Well, it was in '86. I was I used to do a lot of sideman work in New York in the mid '80s, and on one occasion I had played on an album called with Melissa Morgan, her first album on Capitol Records, and I
Right,
went to go collect my check from Hush Productions in New York City,
right,
and the owner of the company, Charles Huggins, he said to me, "Man, I didn't know you played saxophone. I thought you were a keyboard player." He saw me playing keyboards
right.
with a band out of New York called Flick and BB&Q band, so he thought I was a sax. Well, anyway, I said, "Yeah, man, that's what I do." So he says, "Hey, man, I'm thinking about signing a jazz artist. I'm interested in that. Why don't you bring me some demos?" And I did. So I brought the
Hmm.
demos to him and his brother Paul Huggins, and they decided to sign me as their artist and sign me to EMI Records. And the rest is history. We put that album out, and it went gold. Went on tour with Freddie, opening for Freddie Jackson, and before we knew it, we had a gold album. My first gold album. So
Let's talk about connections with different artists. Grover Washington.
yes.
Now,
Oh,
you ever got a chance to really meet him and
oh
collaborate with him?
yeah.
Because
Hmm.
the styles that I really get from you guys is cultural.
Yeah.
Different from any other sounds that I really hear. Now, I like Boney James and I like other artists as well, but when it comes down to you guys, it's very cultural. I call it sounds of blackness.
Hmm.
That's just me.
Sure.
Because I've been listening to jazz for a very long time, and I've sampled some other stuff from other people's jazz albums as well as being a producer. And I find that you guys have a whole different type of sound. So how did you actually incorporate your sound? Because you didn't really want to be like anybody else.
No.
So let's
Well,
talk about
uh,
your being genuine.
yeah. Well, for me, no one can deny that people like Grover Washington, Ronnie Laws, back in the '70s, changed the culture of jazz, as I said.
Hmm.
Uh, and I mean, I remember as a kid growing up, when you played a gig, you couldn't do a gig and not play Mr. Magic if you played saxophone because it was a Freddie
Right.
Black. You know, I mean, it was what people danced to at the time. Plus they loved his sound.
Hmm.
So I was really a fan of Grover, and then years later, he became a mentor, if you will, for me.
Right. Right.
I entered the industry as a professional solo artist. But to me, I think there's not a saxophone player in the smooth jazz world that cannot give tribute to people like Grover
Of
or
course.
Early Turrentine or Ronnie Laws or those people, because those records. I mean, you mentioned it being cultural, but the reality is the majority of people that bought those records back in those days were African American people.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Well, I come out of that tradition, and
Right.
I mean, we've had other people of cultural influences come along, which is fine, but
Mhm.
we still have to give the respect to where it all started.
Of
So
course. And I give homage to all of them, man. They like James Brown. They paved the way for a lot of people. You know what I'm saying? Najee, let's talk about your very first tour. Now, let's
yeah.
take it back. How did you feel actually stepping on stage, just knowing that the spotlight was definitely on you?
Oh wow, gosh. Let me see. Well, prior to that, as a teenager, my very first world tour was with a band called Area Code, and
Hmm.
we toured Europe and Central America for the USO.
Hmm.
So that went on to touring with other people over the years, and then in 1986, 87, when my album was doing very well, uh, my manager at the time, Charles Huggins, put me on tour opening for Freddie Jackson, and I was playing 15 minutes a night, playing these big arenas and playing 3 songs while people walked in and took their seats.
Oh wow, that's cool
So
though.
it took me a while to adjust, to learn how
Right.
to become a star performer in that way, and because in the before prior to that, I was touring with people as a side musician, playing with Shaka in her band, playing in the horn
Right.
section, and and other people as well. So, you know, so it was
You
quite
know,
enough.
I
Yeah.
I want to bring up a name, man. That I feel that I would say that is in contrast to what you do and what everybody else do. Stevie Wonder.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I look at him as a person because he came out with an album years ago where actually he had Herbie on there. I forgot if you was on there or whatever, but it was such a contrast of listening to all the tracks and all the music on there in sync. You know, it's a difference of listening to music, but listening to all the incentives and ingredients on a track. You know what I'm saying? So let's talk about that.
Well, before I left Capitol EMI Records in '97, I think it was, or maybe '94. My last album with them was a song called "A Tribute to Stevie Wonder: Songs from the Key of Life," and George produced that album and brought in all the original musicians that played on the original with Stevie. So we had Herbie Hancock on there. We had who else? Patrice Rushen. We had Sheila E. We had well, actually they came later, but we had all the people from the Motown era come, and play. James Johnson and so he flew in people from Detroit. Paul Reiser did all the orchestration on that record. So that was my last album on the Capitol EMI system. And it was a great record. George produced it and he brought in everybody to do it. So
okay. Well, listen, we're gonna take a little break and we're gonna listen to some of Najee's newer tracks. And you guys, support him, go out there, listen to him, go to his concerts and really embrace him. So we'll be right back. Stay tuned.
It's not just mine, his or her house. This is our house.
We got some fun people in the house tonight.
Really down, playing the games you do. Someday, everything will be alright. Know that different people make the world go round.
And it's all because of you, my dreams are coming true.
erases my rainy day.
Right now, I don't care who's watching.
For whatever the reason there might be.
With your love by my side, the world will be mine. You're the one for me.
Yeah.
And we're back. My name is Tyrone Lowe. This is my show, The Legends. And in the House of the Legends, I have the legendary Najee. I'm sorry, Najee. Now, Najee, how many times do you tour a year on the average?
Well, generally all 12 months out of the year. We're doing something every month, doing something. We're off for the next 2 weeks. We go back out in April, but we just finished doing Oakland, California, Yoshi's, and we've done Cincinnati was our first day. We ended our touring last year in London at the Ronnie Scott's, spent time in Brazil last year recording, doing a lot of stuff. We get around. So.
Does the flute actually give you a mellow type of mental type of status when you actually play it? I mean, you play different types of horns, but I'm talking about the different type of vibes that between the saxophone and the flute. Can you tell the viewers about that?
Yeah, well, to me, they're two different instruments.
Right.
The biggest mistake I say sax players make is approaching the flute like a saxophone. It's an instrument in and of itself. So, but I choose the instrument based on what the song I think requires and what I can deliver to the song. And sometimes saxophone may not be the voice. So.
Okay. So I see in the background you have several types of sax.
Oh yeah.
Do they all put out a different types of sound, or you just say one morning I'm just going to just pick this one because that's the mood I'm in, sort of.
Yeah. Sometimes when I'm recording, or I have a lot of sax, but these are just a few of them back here. But I got them in my house. But they all have their own character, so they all have a different vibe. I have an alto back there, and the rest of those are tenors. But I play soprano, and then I always keep one of my flutes around. So I got one here. You can see. Anyway, so
that's cool, man. Crazy me was thinking about a snake coming up, and that's just me. There's a lot of new artists coming out. Rather it's jazz, contemporary type of music, acting, things like of that nature. You have any encouragement that you can actually give to them, due to the fact that you've lived a prolonged type of career? So tell them a little something to actually advance them in their career and keep them encouraged.
I think one of the things I struggled with in the very beginning was being comfortable with who I was. As a saxophone player, you experiment trying to sound like Grover, trying to sound like David Sanborn, but at the end of the day, I still sounded like Najee, and that's what people bought. So I would encourage young artists to just be themselves, be comfortable with whatever your voice is, and do that. Because they say what is it? Envy is ignorance and imitation is suicide. So I got that from somebody else, but I believe that to be true. Be comfortable with your voice and just go perfect that, because every one of us have our own voice.
Najee, can you tell the viewers how many studio albums that you have, and actually, which is the most personal for you?
I don't know if I have any personal. Maybe the very first one, because that was the one that got me in the game. You know? And then from there on, we've had major successes with the ones that followed. But I have to say, probably that very first album, because it became so big that I didn't realize that I actually had a real career, and actually got paid doing this stuff. As a kid, I'd have done this stuff for free, but not anymore, of course. But but I would probably say the very, very first one, because that was the entree. And then I would say maybe the Tokyo Blue record, because that was the one that my brother and I collaborated on, together as he as a producer, me as an artist. So, You know, everything else that's come after that has just been great to do, you know, as an artist. But those two probably hold a very special place in my heart.
So this year has been very special for you. You won the actual instrumental. I forgot what award it was that you won just recently. Can you tell the viewers about that?
Yeah, there was a couple. But I think the one you might be talking about is the Instrumentalist of the Year.
Yeah, Instrumentalist of the Year. Yes.
Yes, that, and I think we won a couple of other ones. But you know, for me, it's always special. You know, I don't create records with the goal of getting a Grammy or doing
Right. Right.
never, because all of that stuff is subjective and it's not up to you who wins. You know,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm grateful when people recognize it and accept and say, "Hey, you're worthy of some recognition for the work you've done."
That's pretty cool, man. Because we all have to start from the root, you
Yes,
know, and definitely. I played music for a long time. As being a DJ, engineer, I produce, I do it all,
you play.
and I had to find my identity too, as far as what I wanted to do. And I found out that I had an integrated type of mentality towards everything. I wanted to grab everything, and I
Yeah.
know that at least at one of them there will be actually some type of recognition, you know, and things like that. My question to you is that, um, due to the fact that you're at the top of your game, do you ever sit down and think about how am I going to actually make this better? You know, am I going to upgrade this to a certain type of perfection before I decide to let this thing go?
You know what? I've never felt at the top of my game.
Really?
I've never had that feeling. You know, I got to be honest. I mean, I've been
Okay.
to achieve a lot, but it was never on the spirit of I've arrived. You know, because as my brother would always put it, when you get to the top of one level, you're always at the bottom of another. You know, so
Right, right, right.
and with musicians, we don't. A friend of mine said one day, you know, we don't retire. We just don't hear anymore. You know,
Hmm.
you know, meaning you can't hear musically what you should be doing.
Right, right, right,
As long as I can hear and not physically, but you know, creatively speaking,
right,
things to do and respond to. Listen, for me, I haven't reached that point where I'm like I can relax. It's a journey, you know. It's not
right.
really,
Exactly. Yes.
you know. So mhm.
Um, Najee, tell the viewers about some of your upcoming events that's coming up this year for 2023, and let them know what's going on.
Oh, very exciting. But well, my website we just rebuilt it. It's called NajeeOfficial.com.
Hmm.
And there you can look and see what tour dates are coming up. Starting back up in April, we'll be at the Seabreeze Jazz Festival this in April, which is a big one. And
Right.
we're just now starting to get all the Northeast activity together, as well as California and other places around the country, Midwest. So you go to NajeeOfficial.com and you'll find me and see everything that we're doing.
Okay.
Excited. Got to go back to Brazil. I'm recording a project down there, and probably down there doing that and a couple of concerts here and there, and you know, so pretty
That's
exciting stuff.
cool.
Yes. Mhm.
Um, any shout outs to anyone that you really want to recognize at this time right now?
I just want to shout out to all my people there in the Northeast, particularly in New York. I know I've been getting emails asking when I'm coming back, and we're figuring that out now. So we'll be back hopefully this year in 23.
That's pretty cool. I'm very honored to have you on my show, man, because I remember I was pretty young when I really started listening to you,
Oh, so was
and
I.
you know, and for you to actually project the type of image you was giving towards the jazz aspect, man, it was very nice, very soothing,
Thank you, my
and
friend.
things of that nature. You know, my thing is that when back in the days, man, if you want to get a nice girl and
Yeah.
stuff, you know, you put a nice poster in your room with the black light on, you know,
Uh-huh.
and you throw on some Najee.
Yeah. Thank you, brother. You know, hey, you know, it's funny because when I first came out, my name wasn't popular when
Uh-huh.
it first came out, and now I meet people all the time with saying, you know, I named my son after you. I named my, you know,
Right.
whatever. It's very popular now.
You know, it's been an honor having you on my show, man.
Thank you,
And
Tyron. It's an honor. Thank you.
you know, and thank you. I had Merlin Devine on my show as well, man, and
Oh,
he's a very big fan of yours, you know.
okay, well, tell him I said thank you so
I
much.
surely will. I want to thank you again for being on my show, The Legends, and I want you to come again. I will definitely invite you to, again somewhere along the line, you know. And this has been another T-Lo video production with my guest, Najee. So you guys stay tuned for another episode. Thank you very much. Najee, thank you.
Thank you. Take care, Tyrone. Thanks
All right.
for the friend. Be well.
All right.
All right.
It's not just mine, his or her house. This is our house.
We got some fun people in the house tonight.
This is our house.
Sending you this Valentine in hopes that you're still mine. And if that Valentine doesn't reach you, it's okay. Now it's not as bad like you thought it would be. Come on, baby, take my heart. I love you still, and I always will be yours, I'm so in love with you. Yeah, 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 Hey, yeah, I'm sending you this Valentine in hopes that you're still mine. If that Valentine doesn't reach you, it's okay, yeah, it's okay. I can't make up your mind for you. Just have patience, that's all you gotta do. Love you still, and I always will be yours. Down on my knees, begging you back, baby.
It's not just mine,
There's
his or her
nothing
house. This is our
I
house.
won't do.